There are discoveries that make history richer, and then there are discoveries that make history nervous. Because every once in a while, something comes out of the ground that does not behave the way it should. Not according to textbooks, not according to timelines, not according to everything we were told about how civilization began. A machine where no machine should exist. A temple older than farming itself. Perfect stone spheres made without modern tools. A city with plumbing too advanced for its age. A so-called battery built nearly 2,000 years before modern electrical science. An artifact so precise, so deliberate, so unsettling that even experts are forced to admit the same thing. We have the object, we have the ruins, we have the measurements, but we do not have the full explanation. And that is where this story begins. Because the most disturbing archaeological discoveries are not the ones that are fake. They are the ones that are real. Real enough to hold. Real enough to date. Real enough to photograph, scan, weigh, and lock inside museums. And still strange enough to leave behind a question no one can comfortably answer. What if human history is not missing a few pages? What if entire chapters were erased? If you think the ancient world was primitive, predictable, and easy to understand, these 6 discoveries are about to break that illusion piece by piece. Let's begin in southeastern Turkey, on a dry, wind-swept hill that looked so ordinary archaeologists almost ignored it. For years, the site was dismissed as unremarkable. A mound of stone. Broken fragments. Nothing that seemed capable of rewriting the human past. But in the 1990s, excavations revealed something hidden beneath the surface that should not have existed at all. Massive stone pillars. Carved enclosures. Monumental architecture. An ancient ritual complex now known as Göbekli Tepe. And the date attached to it was the part that stunned the world. More than 11,000 years old. That means Göbekli Tepe was built thousands of years before Stonehenge. Thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt. And most unsettling of all, it appears to have been constructed before the rise of agriculture. Before permanent villages. Before the kind of organized society scholars believed was necessary for projects of this scale. That is the problem. According to the old model, first came farming, then came settlements, then labor systems, priesthoods, monuments, and religion on a grand scale. Göbekli Tepe flips that order upside down. Here stood towering T-shaped pillars, some weighing many tons, arranged in circles and carved with foxes, serpents, birds, boars, and abstract symbols whose meanings still remain uncertain. This was not crude survival work. This was design, planning, symbolism, coordination, belief made visible in stone. So, who built it? Hunter-gatherers are the official answer. But that only deepens the mystery. Because hunter-gatherers were never supposed to build anything like this. Not at this scale. Not with this precision. Not this early. And then comes the strangest detail of all. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe did not simply abandon it. They buried Italiano deliberately. Completely. Carefully. As if they wanted it hidden. As if they wanted it preserved. As if they knew someone, someday, would uncover it. And realize that the first great mystery of civilization was not how we built the ancient world, but how much of it was already lost, before recorded history even began. If this story made you question everything you thought you knew about history, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Because this is only the beginning. There are more forgotten truths, more buried mysteries, and more discoveries that history was never meant to explain. So don't just watch. Be part of the journey. Subscribe now, and step into the unknown with me. And tell me in the comments, do you think these ancient secrets were lost? Or intentionally hidden? From the stone circles of Turkey, we move to the dense tropical lowlands of Costa Rica, where one of archaeology's most silent mysteries was uncovered by accident. In the 1930s, workers clearing jungle for banana plantations began finding something impossible beneath the roots and mud. Stone spheres, not rough boulders, not naturally rounded rocks, but near-perfect carved spheres. Smooth, deliberate, and so geometrically precise that even today they look less like relics of a forgotten tribe and more like objects, abandoned by lost technology. Some were small enough to hold in 2 hands. Others stood taller than a person. The largest weighed up to 15 tons, and the first reaction was tragedy. Workers believed treasure might be hidden inside them, so some spheres were split open with dynamite. What was destroyed in those first years can never be measured, but what survived was enough to leave archaeologists with a problem they still do not know how to solve. More than 300 stone spheres have been recorded in the Decrees Delta and nearby regions. Many were carved from gabbro, an extremely hard, igneous rock. A few were transported far from the quarries where that rock naturally occurs. Some were found in lines, some in clusters, some on elevated ground, as if their placement mattered just as much as their shape. And shape is where the mystery deepens, because the finest examples are astonishingly close to true spheres. Not approximately round, not good enough for ritual art, but precise enough to raise the kind of question historians hate hearing. How did a society without modern measuring tools, metal machinery, or wheeled transport achieve this level of perfection? The official explanation is simple. They were shaped with hammerstones, then polished over long periods using sand and abrasion. That may explain the labor. It does not fully explain the accuracy. A deviation of only a few millimeters on a massive stone surface is not something the human eye casually produces. It requires control, comparison, repetition, a method. And yet no one has found the workshop. No one has found the measuring system. No one has found written instructions explaining what these spheres were for. Were they symbols of power? Astronomical markers? Territorial monuments? Sacred objects aligned with a worldview now lost forever? The silence around them is almost as strange as the spheres themselves, because the people who made them left no clear message attached to their purpose. No inscription, no ruler's name, no triumphal record, just shape, weight, placement, intention. It is one thing for the ancient world to build something massive. That, at least, we understand. Human beings can move mountains when belief and labor combine. But it is another thing entirely to create objects of such clean perfection for a purpose no one can explain. They sit there even now, in museums, in fields, on open ground, mute, polished, ancient, and deeply unsettling. Not because they look supernatural, but because they look calculated. And the moment ancient objects begin to look calculated, history stops feeling primitive and starts feeling incomplete. Because if the stone spheres of Costa Rica were only decorative, then why do they display a precision so difficult to justify? And if they were not decorative, then what system were they part of? That question leads us to our next discovery. A city so advanced that it looked less like the Bronze Age and more like something built for a future that never came. Now we travel to the ruins of Mohenjo-daro in present-day Pakistan, a place whose very name means Mound of the Dead. What archaeologists uncovered here was not just an ancient settlement, it was a shock. Because beneath the dust lay the remains of a city planned with a level of order, sanitation, and engineering that should not have existed nearly 4,500 years ago. Straight streets, standardized fired bricks, multi-room homes, private bathing areas, covered drains, a citywide sewage system. Let that sink in. Thousands of years before modern urban planning, before Rome, before many of the civilizations most people are taught to admire first. Mohenjo-daro had an infrastructure system so sophisticated that parts of it were better designed than sanitation networks used in much later cities. This was not chaos. This was planning. This was civic intelligence. And yet what makes Mohenjo-daro truly haunting is not only how advanced it was, it is how suddenly everything seems to have ended. At its peak, the city may have held tens of thousands of people. It belonged to the Indus Valley civilization, one of the great cradles of the ancient world. But unlike Egypt and Mesopotamia, this civilization left behind no giant royal tombs, no dramatic victory monuments, no glorified kings carved into stone. Instead, it left something stranger. Efficiency without spectacle, order without visible tyranny, urban life without the kind of militarized symbolism common in many early empires. And then, somehow, it faded. Official explanations point to climate stress, river shifts, economic decline, or gradual abandonment. Those are reasonable theories. But Mohenjo-daro keeps provoking darker speculation because not every detail fits neatly into a slow collapse. Scattered human remains were found in the streets and homes. Some appeared as though death came suddenly. Over time, these images fueled claims that the city had suffered a catastrophic event. Something violent, unnatural, even explosive. Then came one of the most controversial layers of the mystery. Reports circulated about heat-altered materials, vitrified surfaces, and radiation-related claims tied to the site. Many of those claims remain disputed, exaggerated, or poorly sourced, and serious scholars reject the more extreme conclusions. But the reason the story survives is simple. Mohenjo-daro already feels too advanced for the world most people imagine when they hear the words Bronze Age. That contrast is what gives the mystery its force, because even stripped of sensational theories, the city still forces an uncomfortable question. Why did one of the most intelligently designed urban centers of the ancient world disappear so completely that its script remains undeciphered? And its political structure still escapes us. We can map its streets, we can study its drains, we can measure its bricks, but we still cannot fully hear its voice. That may be the greatest loss of all. A civilization capable of urban precision, standardized design, and sophisticated water management should have left us a clearer legacy. Instead, Mohenjo-daro stands like a message written in a language history can no longer read. And when a civilization this organized vanishes while leaving behind infrastructure this advanced, people begin to ask whether ancient progress was not a straight ladder upward, but a cycle of rising, disappearing, and being forgotten. Which brings us to another object equally disturbing in its own way. Because this time, the mystery is not a city. It is a device. A small clay vessel that may have produced electricity long before modern science was supposed to discover it. And the dusty soil near Baghdad. Archaeologists uncovered an object so modest in appearance that, at first glance, it barely looked important. A clay jar, about the size of a hand. Nothing about it suggested danger to the historical timeline, but inside that jar was a combination that changed everything. A copper cylinder, an iron rod, bitumen ceiling. And when researchers recreated the structure and added an acidic liquid like vinegar or lemon juice, the result was startling. It generated an electrical charge. This object became famous as the Baghdad Battery. If the interpretation is correct, then someone in the ancient world assembled a functioning electrochemical cell nearly 2,000 years before the formal foundations of modern electrical science. And that is exactly why the artifact remains controversial. Because if it is a battery, then the next question is unavoidable. What was it powering? Some suggest electroplating, the use of electric current to coat objects in a thin layer of precious metal. Others argue it may have been used in ritual performance, perhaps to create shocking sensations associated with sacred power. Skeptics respond that the jar may have served an entirely different purpose and that battery is a modern label imposed on an ancient object. But here is the issue. Alternative explanations often feel less complete than the electrical one, not more. Why combine those exact materials in that exact arrangement? Why isolate the metals? Why create a form that behaves so neatly like a simple cell? This is where archaeology becomes deeply uncomfortable, because once an artifact begins functioning in the present, people can no longer dismiss it as pure symbolism. You can argue over intention, you can argue over context, but functioning objects have a way of cornering disbelief. And as strange as the Baghdad Battery is, the next discovery is stranger still. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera found a shipwreck resting deep beneath the sea. Among statues, coins, and luxury cargo was a corroded lump of bronze, so unremarkable it might easily have been ignored forever. Then it cracked open. Inside were gears, not one or two, but dozens of finely cut bronze ears interlocked in a complexity no one expected from the ancient world. Over time, Imaging and reconstruction revealed an instrument now known as the Antikythera mechanism, a device capable of tracking celestial cycles, predicting eclipses, and modeling astronomical motion with an elegance that looked almost impossible for its age. This was not a toy. This was not decorative metalwork. This was computation in bronze, a machine often described as the world's first known analog computer. And the real shock was not simply that it existed. It was that nothing else quite like it appeared again for more than 1,000 years. That gap is terrifying, because it suggests one of two things. Either the mechanism was a miraculous one-off created by a rare genius far ahead of his time, or it belonged to a broader technological tradition that was mostly lost. Lost in fire, lost in war, lost in collapse, lost so completely that history forgot not only the machine, but the knowledge system that made it possible. And once you accept that possibility, the ancient world stops looking like a simple past and starts looking like a broken archive, which leads us to one of the most disputed and most unsettling discoveries of them all. Because sometimes the artifact is not only strange, sometimes it arrives wrapped in disappearance, censorship, and a story so explosive that even experts would rather not touch it. High in the mountains near the borderlands of Tibet and Qinghai, stories circulated for generations about caves avoided by local tribes. Caves linked to beings who had fallen from the sky. Then came one of the most controversial discoveries ever tied to ancient archaeology. Inside remote cave systems, reports emerged of unusual burials, small skeletons within large skulls, and hundreds of circular stone discs, each with a hole in the center and spiral grooves running outward like the track of a record. These became known as the Dropa discs. According to the story, the discs contained microscopic markings or symbols defined to easily read, and later, researchers allegedly claimed the inscriptions described a crash or arrival from the heavens thousands of years ago. Now, here is where things become dangerous for the truth, because the Dropa narrative exists in a zone between archaeology, folklore, lost records, vanished artifacts, and possible fabrication. Some researchers dismiss the entire account as a myth built from distortion and sensational retelling. Others insist that something real once existed behind the story, and that key evidence disappeared into storage, silence, or neglect. That uncertainty is exactly why the case refuses to die, because even when a mystery is disputed, it can remain powerful if too many pieces around it feel unresolved. Where are the discs now? Why are records inconsistent? Why do the details drift between denial and partial acknowledgement? And why do stories tied to the site keep returning in different forms, decade after decade? The Dropa discs may be the weakest case in terms of accepted academic certainty, but they may also be the strongest example of something else. How quickly evidence can dissolve when it threatens a comfortable narrative. And that brings us to the real point of all 6 discoveries. Not that every sensational claim is true, not that every mystery proves lost super civilizations or forbidden technology, but that history is far more fragile than we pretend. Göbekli Tepe suggests organized ritual and monumental construction existed before the old timeline allowed. The stone spheres of Costa Rica show precision that still feels difficult to explain. Mohenjo-daro reveals urban intelligence so advanced it forces us to rethink what ancient civilization looked like. The Baghdad battery hints that practical knowledge may have emerged long before its official rediscovery. The Antikythera mechanism proves that complex scientific engineering once existed in forms the world later forgot. And the Dropa story, whether fully true or not, reminds us that disappearance is one of archaeology's oldest companions. We like to imagine the past as a staircase, one step after another. Cave, farm, city, empire, machine, modern world. But what if history is not a staircase? What if it is a broken signal? A rise, a collapse, a silence, a rediscovery, a civilization building above the ruins of another civilization it no longer remembers. That possibility is what makes these discoveries so hard to ignore, because the ground beneath us may not be hiding isolated artifacts. It may be hiding evidence that humanity has been brilliant more than once, and forgetful more than once too. So the next time someone tells you the ancient world was simple, remind them of the temple older than farming, the machine at the bottom of the sea, the city with impossible planning, the battery before electricity, the perfect spheres in the jungle, and the discs that may have carried a story no one was ever meant to recover. History is not silent. It is buried, and every time we dig, it says something we were not prepared to hear.